The wind had no warmth on Virelli. It clawed through her tattered cloak as if angry that she still drew breath. Her knees trembled as she approached the 12th gate, jagged steel and humming sensors, guarded by stone-faced officials in silver gray armor. Their rifles weren't raised, but they didn't need to be. The message was already clear. No entry, no mercy. She limped closer anyway, dragging one leg behind her, clutching the thin satchel that held all she owned, some dried grain powder, a half-melted identification node, and a tiny, cracked pendant. Her name pulsed weakly across the ID. Ship, Lerna. Species, Arcturan hybrid. Status, displaced. The official closest to her didn't even glance up, turn back. This outpost is at capacity. Lerna coughed, once hard. Blood flecked her lips. Please, show mercy. He turned, looked her dead in the eyes, then simply said, Nex. There was no Nex. The lion had already fled during the last sandquake. It was just her now. Lerna swallowed a cry as she fell to her knees, hand extended. I've been to 12 worlds. 12. No one even checks the pulse anymore. 13's your unlucky number, the guard muttered, and walked away. The transport back to the wasteland terminal was quiet. Broken droids, exiles, and half-functioning synthetic traders slumped in silence. No one asked what rejection looked like. They all already knew. Lerna stared out the cracked window, watching the red moons of Virelli rise like bruises in the sky. Her chest ached not from illness alone, but from the weight of relentless rejection. She wasn't even asking for salvation anymore. Just rest, one clean bed, one hot drink, one place to die with dignity. Gate 13 wasn't on any official map. A blind drifter had whispered it to her in the fuel station latrines. Try Thurgate. Deep in the junk districts, the maps erased it, but it's there. It ain't shiny, it ain't safe, but I heard they taken ghosts. Lerna didn't ask what that meant. She just walked. For 12 hours. Her feet bled. Her lungs rattled. Her cloak was torn by magnetic wind. But eventually, she found it in an old security checkpoint overgrown with neon moss and shattered drones. The gate didn't even look functional. No turrets, no ID scans. Just a simple wooden door grafted into a rusted bulkhead. She hesitated. 13, she whispered. Lucky or cursed? She raised her hand. Knocked once. It creaked open. Slowly, no scanners, no voices. Just a warm breeze, and the scent of bread. Lerna blinked. The air wasn't sterile here. It wasn't filtered. It smelled of life, yeast, herbs, oil. Hello, she rasped. From behind a low counter came a figure. Not in uniform, not armored, just soft clothes, human, dark hair, rolled sleeves, flour on the hands. He looked up. And paused. You're hurt. She staggered in. Don't send me away. He was already moving, grabbing a chair, gently guiding her down. He didn't ask for her ID, didn't flinch at the scars across her neck, didn't even ask her name. He just wrapped a warm towel around her shoulders and said, softly, you're safe now. She couldn't stop crying. Not at first. The chair was warm. The tea was real actual tea, not ration synth. Her hands shook so badly that the man knelt beside her and held the cup while she drank. I'm Lerna. She croaked. I'm Kalen. Just that. No rank. No suspicion. Just a name. Like she was someone worth knowing. Why did you open the door? She asked. He smiled, and it was tired but kind. Because you knocked. That night, she slept inside walls for the first time in 6 years. The bed was old, the mattress thin, but it held warmth and silence. When she woke gasping in the dark, he was there in the hallway, not speaking, just present. She drifted back to sleep knowing someone stayed. In the weeks that followed, Lerna healed slowly. Kalen never pressed her. He offered food, space, and silence. He ran a bakery out of the old station's forgotten mess hall, baking for the underground communities that had no use for military rules or bureaucratic cruelty. They tried to shut this place down, he told her one evening as they shared thick slices of honey bread, said it was unsanitary, said it harbored fugitives. They weren't wrong. Why stay? He looked at her. Because this place lets people be people. One afternoon, she found herself laughing. really laughing for the first time since her planet had burned. It was over something stupid. She'd spilled spice powder into the dough and turned a whole tray orange. Kalen had walked in, taken one look, and said, "Congratulations, you've invented interstellar cornbread." He grinned at her laugh, like it mattered, but the peace couldn't last. Not on Virelli, not with patrols tightening and refugees being tracked like prey. One night, Kalen returned late, jacket torn, blood at his temple. "Raid?" she asked, heart racing. He nodded. Scanners caught wind of movement near the 13th gate. "They think someone's sheltering hybrids." Her breath caught. "I have to leave," she whispered. Kalen shook his head. "No, I can hide you. They'll search, they always do." His jaw clenched. "Then I'll lie." She sat by the oven late that night, hands folded. "Why?" she asked him. "You barely know me. Why risk it?" Kalen sat beside her, staring into the coals. "Because the first time I ever begged for mercy," he said quietly, "someone did. Show me." He didn't elaborate, and she didn't ask. But when he reached over and gently took her hand, she didn't pull away, and somewhere in that broken, forgotten outpost, the 13th door stayed closed. But not to the right people, just to those who forgot that mercy still had a place in the stars. The 13th door didn't creak open. It breathed as though the old wood had lungs. The door exhaled when it swung back, warmth spilling into the night, chasing away the frost that clung to her like shame. She blinked into the light. She was too used to the cold, too used to being shut out before a full sentence left her lips. But this time, the light didn't hurt her. And then, a voice, not mechanical, not cruel, not a calculated alien hum from one of the Empire's synthetic gatekeepers. Just a voice, warm, human. "You look like you're freezing. Come in." She almost didn't trust her legs to carry her over the threshold. Her bruised feet hesitated. 12 rejections had made her wary of hope. But warmth pooled from the doorway, inviting, insistent. Her wings, still bound in brittle gauze, trembled at her back. She took one step, then another, until the door shut gently behind her. He didn't ask her name at first. He didn't ask what planet she came from or why her eyes gleamed like shards of blue fire. He didn't ask why her skin shimmered slightly in the dark, or why she was covered in soot and star ash. He just handed her a cup of something warm, steam, curling up like a prayer, and sat on the floor nearby, like they'd always known each other. She clutched the cup. She didn't drink yet. She just stared at him. "You don't look like them," she whispered. He raised an eyebrow. "Them, the others, the ones behind the other doors." Her throat ached. "They looked through me. You looked at me." He gave a tired smile. "Maybe that's because I've been looked through myself." His name was Theo. He didn't offer it right away, but after the silence settled between them like a thick, warm quilt, he finally said it. "This house used to belong to my grandmother," he explained. "She called it the last lantern, said it should always be lit, always welcoming. I didn't understand that until now." She held the cup tighter. "Theo wasn't like the others, not just because he let her in, but because he noticed things quiet. Things, the way her fingers shook when she brought the cup to her lips, the way she flinched when the fire cracked too loudly, the way her eyes scanned the room for exits, as if she'd need to run at any moment. He saw it all, and he said nothing. Sometimes, silence was the greatest mercy of all. She slept that night. Not deeply, not peacefully, but it was the first time, in what felt like years, that she slept inside. No wind howled against her ribs. No metallic doors hissed shut behind her. No sirens. No scent of burning circuitry. Just blankets. Just warmth. And Theo. She dreamt of a field of stars. Not the kind you navigate. The kind you plant. By morning, she'd folded herself into the farthest corner of the house, curled beside a window that spilled gold across the floor. She didn't know how long she had. Maybe the ones who had chased her would find this place. Too, maybe Theo would get scared and ask her to leave like the others. But when he found her, huddled and trying to look small, he simply knelt and offered her food. "You can stay as long as you want." She didn't cry then, but later, when she thought he couldn't see, she did. And maybe, just maybe, he let her believe he hadn't noticed. Over the next few days, something strange happened. The house changed. Or maybe she did. At first, it was little things. The creaky floorboard by the kitchen stopped groaning when she walked across it barefoot. The light in the hallway, which used to flicker, now burned steady when she passed beneath it. The house began to know her, to welcome her, like it was remembering how to be alive again. "You're good with machines," Theo said one morning as she adjusted a loose panel above the hearth. She paused. "Not machines, just places that want to be healed." He tilted his head. "That's what you do. Heal things?" "I try," she said softly. "Before they called me dangerous." He didn't press. He didn't ask who they were, but his eyes darkened. He understood more than she realized. On the fourth day, she went outside. Just for a moment, just to breathe the air that didn't taste like grief. And that's when she saw the sign, painted faintly across the outer gate, nearly hidden by rust and time. "Refugees welcome. All species, no exceptions." Her knees buckled. Theo caught her before she hit the dirt. "You left it up," she said, voice cracking. "After all this time." He nodded. "My grandmother made me promise, but the others, the 12 before you, they forgot what promises meant." His voice tightened. "Or remembered them only when convenient." She looked up at him. "Why didn't you shut your door?" He met her gaze, steady and clear. "Because one day, someone like you might need it open." That night, she asked him a question she'd been holding in her chest since the first moment. He let her in. "What if I am dangerous?" He didn't answer immediately. He was fixing a broken ceramic pot, gluing the pieces back together with a golden resin she didn't recognize. "Then you're dangerous," he said at last. "So am I. So is this house. Anything that survives the fire is dangerous." He turned to her. "But maybe you're also worth the danger." She hadn't been touched in so long that his words felt like hands. The house wasn't empty. Not really. There were things inside. Memories, rooms that had been shut for years. Dusty photographs, old books, a broken piano that she slowly began tuning again, one aching string at a time. Theo watched her work. He didn't interrupt. Until one night, after she'd fixed the last key, she played something. Not a full song. Just a small collection of notes. A lullaby from her home world. Theo's breath caught. He didn't understand the words, but she sang them anyway. When she was done, she turned to find him standing in the doorway, his eyes glassy. "I didn't know," he whispered. "Didn't know what? That my house was still alive. The danger didn't stay away forever. It never does." On the 10th day, a scout drone buzzed over the roof. She felt it before she saw it. Her skin prickled. Her wings stiffened. The warmth inside her turned to ice. Theo heard it too. He grabbed the old rifle from above the mantel and stepped outside without a word. She followed him, not because she had to, but because the house had become hers too. She lifted her palm. Old runes glowed along her skin. The drone paused, scanning, uncertain. Theo raised the rifle. "You sure?" She nodded. Together, they knocked it out of the sky, later, under the stars. She asked him something else. "If I hadn't knocked," she said, "would you have come looking?" He smiled sadly. "No." Her chest tightened. "But not because I didn't care," he added quickly, "because I didn't think I'd ever be needed again." She nodded. "I'm glad you knocked. I'm glad you answered." The 12th night came with a storm. Not of wind or rain, but ships, quiet and black and cold, orbiting, watching. She didn't run. She stood on the porch beside him, and he reached over, took her hand, and squeezed it. "Let them try," he said. She smiled, teeth like flame. "They'll wish they hadn't." The lights of the refugee tower flickered once, then dimmed to a low red glow. Another energy rationing cycle. From her perch on the upper walkways, Iryl watched the clusters of survivors shift in the courtyard below. They were mostly quiet. Now, even the desperate learned not to cry out anymore. Talon's hand found hers as he approached silently, as he always did. "They're processing the 16th wave," he said. 3 more transports just landed. "More rejections?" He didn't answer immediately. Then, 3 confirmed. "They say Sector Delta 6 turned away over 100 again." Iryl tightened her grip on the railing. "How can they keep calling themselves allied worlds?" Talon said nothing. The red glow made his human features sharper, harsher than usual, but his voice remained calm. Because they don't know what to do with a war they didn't start and can't end. Iroh turned. We didn't start it either. He looked at her, eyes fierce. I know, that was the thing. He believed her, the only one who ever had. And now, others were watching, from the shadows, from silence, from despair. The room where refugees waited to die there were rumors of people vanishing, not from violence but from bureaucracy. Papers delayed, identities erased, whole shuttles rerouted to nowhere, and worst of all, some stopped resisting. Iroh refused to. She stood each night in the line outside the diplomatic quarters, holding up a hand-scrawled message in 5 languages. A plea, simple and direct. Let me speak to someone who remembers the evacuation accords. 11 nights, 11 refusals. Guards rotated. Policies changed. Names disappeared from the logs. And on the 12th night, they tried to escort her out permanently. Talon was the reason they failed. He wasn't armed. He didn't shout. He just stood between her and the security drones with a single phrase. If she leaves, I leave. And something about the way he said it, a whisper, a challenge, a promise, froze even the drones. That was the night people started watching her differently. The Hall of Frozen World's 13th night was a storm of metal rain. Broken satellites fell from the sky as orbital stations above the moon ruptured under stress. Refugees were being herded into underground shelters, panic everywhere. But Iroh stayed behind. One last attempt, one more door. Talon found her as the tremors began. You shouldn't be here, not tonight. She looked at him. I've been told that every night. He moved toward her, then stopped. Something about her eyes. She wasn't broken anymore. She was burning. He said nothing, just stood beside her as they approached the last door. No signs, no guards, just a matte black surface unlabeled. Iroh pressed her hand to it. Nothing happened. Then a hiss, the faintest breath of air. The door opened. Inside the room, no one dared enter. Inside was silence, stark lights, and a woman, non-human, pale-shelled, eyes like mirrored stars, who looked up from a table of data scrolls. I know why you've come, she said. I was expecting you on the 7th night. Iroh blinked. You? What? The woman rose. You carry the bioechoes of the Lasari Accord. You're a direct descendant of the line that signed the treaty Flame. That alone should have been enough to give you sanctuary had anyone remembered their history. Then why did they all refuse me? The woman's smile was sharp. Because they fear memory. Because it comes with responsibility, and guilt, and pain. But I remember. Iroh's voice broke. Then you'll help us? The woman turned her gaze toward Talon, who stood behind her silently. I'll help both of you, she said, but the cost will be high. They were offered a place to live, but it wasn't freedom. Sanctuary was a shadow world, hidden beneath the treaties, never logged in official maps. Technically, illegal. But it had sky and trees and a strange, unfamiliar peace. The survivors who were smuggled there didn't ask questions. They just breathed. But Iroh did ask. Every day, she asked about the drones that patrolled the outer forests, about the scanners in the water, about why they couldn't speak their own names outside the valley. And eventually, she learned the truth. We're not guests, she whispered to Talon one night. We're leverage. The only reason the Federation hasn't bombed this place is because they still think no one survived. They don't know we're alive. Talon looked at her, a flicker of something unreadable in his gaze. Would you rather go back? She turned away. No. But we can't stay silent forever. The message that could break the silencite started with a child's drawing. A girl who hadn't spoken in months suddenly handed Iroh a crumpled image of a black star and a blue flame. She pointed at it, then at the sky, and Iroh knew what it meant. It's happening again, she told Talon. The ones who chased us out, they're coming back to erase what's left. Talon nodded once. Then we need to speak first. But who will listen? He smiled. The ones who opened the 13th door. Maybe it's time we open one more. The broadcast heard across the void they used. A stolen relay, patched from scrap, hidden in a storm basin. The signal was brief, just 3 minutes. But the message, it was everything. Iroh's voice, raw and unedited, played across open frequency bands. To those who turned us away, 12 times we begged. 12 times you refused. The 13th time, One of you listened. We are still alive, and we remember everything. The silence that followed was terrifying. And then, one reply. A man's voice. Human. Iroh, I was there the day we sealed the doors. I was wrong. Give me coordinates. I'm coming. Epilogue. The ashes of shame and the spark of something more. Sanctuary changed after that. The woman who had taken them and revealed her name, Velatrix, a former war diplomat who had resigned in protest. Now she walked the valley openly, no longer hiding. New ships arrived, quietly, discreetly, bringing food, tools, news. And one man, with gray in his hair and a patch of old medals he no longer wore, stepped down onto the soil and knelt before Iroh. I'm sorry, he said. I'm the one who signed the 12th rejection. Iroh looked at him, then offered her hand, not to shake but to help him stand. Talon watched from the distance and smiled. Later, as they stood under stars that felt real again, Iroh whispered, you saved me. Talon said nothing. So she leaned closer, lips brushing his ear. Not just my life. The wind on the outpost was bitter, swirling dust and rust around the bones of a place too far from any sun. The platform creaked as Kesari stepped out, clutching her fraying satchel like it was armor. Her boots sank slightly into the powdery surface. Red dust, always red. The 13th planet, her last chance. She turned and looked back at the gate behind her, still glowing faintly from her rival. It was the only one that hadn't spit her out with fire or force fields or silence. A human had answered. A human had opened the door. She adjusted the strap on her shoulder and walked forward into the wind. The town was little more than a cluster of modules stitched together by desperate hands. Scavenged solar panels, repurposed hydro pipes, and shreds of cloth catching the wind like forgotten prayers. The only building that didn't look ready to collapse was the center lodge, wide, hexagonal, warm light spilling from every window. He stood in the doorway waiting. He hadn't given her a name. He had only said, you can come in if you're tired of running. Inside, the walls were real wood, not synthetics. She hadn't seen that since she was a child on Valtrix before it burned. The scent of warmth clung to everything, resin, spice. Something roasted. Her legs wobbled beneath her. It was too much. I can work, she said quickly, trying to stay upright. You don't have to feed me for nothing. You're not nothing, he said simply. Eat first. She sat down in the corner, folding herself smaller than small. He brought her a dish of strange grain and thick sauce, with a strip of something fried on top. Her claws twitched from habit, but he didn't flinch, just sat nearby, giving her space. You were the first to answer, she murmured. After 12 gates, 12 rejections, not the first to hear, just the first who cared. His voice was soft, but there was iron in it. She glanced up, uncertain. What's your price? She asked. No price. There's always a price. He turned to face her then. You're wrong. There's always a cost, but not a price. She stayed. At first, she expected the deception, waited for the lock on the door, the guards, the collar, waited for the kindness to twist into cruelty like the other 12 had. One offered her food then poisoned her. Another had tried to dissect her while she slept. 2 more had simply spat on her and locked the gate behind. But this door, it didn't close. Not when she roamed the outpost. Not when she walked at night. Not even when she asked questions. He taught her how to splice irrigation lines, how to clean wind filters, how to mend the strange wooden tiles that curved across the roof of the main lodge. You don't owe me, he said every time she tried to give something back, but she still wanted to. One night, while climbing to adjust a turbine, she saw it. A beacon light, far on the ridge. Not 1, 3. They're coming, she whispered to the wind. She rushed down, heart slamming against her ribs. He met her halfway down the scaffolding, gaze already fixed on the flickering signal in the dark. You know who they are? He asked quietly. I've been hunted since the first gate opened. I'm the only one who lived after what happened on Karthus Station. They think I saw too much, did you? I saw a child shot in the back for asking why the water rations were poisoned. That's all. He didn't ask more. He simply said, then we get ready. They didn't run. She helped him bury the old weapons stash he hadn't touched in years. learned how to seal the wind tunnels with reinforced shutters. She scouted the perimeter while he wired up old motion sensors, rerouting the power from a broken cargo loader. They didn't sleep that night, or the next. The lights grew closer. 3 ships, armed, branded with a logo she knew too well. Interplanetary Recovery Division. She backed against the wall when the first ship hovered into view, dust curling in spirals around the undercarriage. He didn't reach for a gun. He stepped outside with his hands open. "We're looking for someone," the armored officer said, stepping down from the ship with a hiss of hydraulics. Her visor glinted silver. Fugitive, known as Sci-Fi. Criminal, saboteur, political radical. He glanced back at the door. "No one like that here," he said calmly. She heard it from inside. Pressed herself smaller into the shadows. Her claws dug into the old carpet. "Mind if we look around?" the officer asked. "I do," he replied. "Private land, unregistered zone." She tilted her head. "Which means you don't have legal protection either. If we find her, your outpost becomes an accessory." He smiled faintly. "You won't find her." They searched, dragged apart the bunkhouse, turned over his workshop, even scanned the crops for hidden life signatures. She stayed in the floor pit beneath the lodge, curled tight with the heat coils barely keeping her warm. He hadn't looked at her when he stepped away, but he dropped a wrapped bar of food near the panel before sealing it. 3 hours pass. She heard boots stomping above her, a curse, a demand for coordinates. Then silence. Then footsteps again, lighter ones. The panel creaked open. His face appeared, tired, smudged with soot. "They left," he said. She broke down. The next day, she packed her satchel. He found her standing at the edge of the outpost. "I can't stay," she said softly. "They'll come back, stronger, and you'll die next time, because of me. I knew that risk the moment I opened the door." Her throat tightened. "I've never belonged anywhere, not since the mines, not since the war, not since Carthus. Every time I begged for mercy, they told me to run or die. And now," she shook her head, "I want to stop running, but I don't want you to bleed for me." He stepped closer, gently placed a small object into her palm, a ring of bent copper wire, twisted to resemble the 13th symbol from an old Terran myth, the key of Hearth. "I don't want you to stay because you're afraid," he said. "I want you to stay because you found something worth protecting." She stared down at the wire. And then, finally, she whispered, "I'm not leaving." And the door still didn't close. The Citadel's golden spires were crumbling. Not from war, not from revolution, but from something quieter, something slower. The weight of what had been denied, what had been done, and what still had not healed. And yet, she stood. Rin once, cast from 12 worlds, once whispered about as a curse or a contagion, now stood in the high court with her back straight, the breeze pulling strands of silver from her braid. She no longer begged, no longer bowed. And across from her, sitting quietly at the dais, was the human who'd answered her knock at the 13th door. Iran. He'd been broken once too, a medic to tender for battlefields, exiled for compassion. They'd tried to make him hard, teach him to turn away, but he hadn't. And that softness, that damnable, enduring heart had saved her, and now it would save others. "We can't let them vote again," Iran whispered, his voice hushed beneath the court's looming rotunda. "If the council rejects the proposal one more time, they'll activate the final accord. No refuge planets, no reparations, nothing. They're going to bury the past," Rin said. "Not fix it." Iran nodded. The chamber doors creaked open. The tribunal entered. Tall, rigid, skin like stone. 12 representatives, one from each world that had shut Rin out. None met her gaze. Then the 13th entered. A child. At least, that's how they appeared, 12 years old, though in truth over 80, genetically re-engineered to stay young. As a gesture of eternal humility, chosen by Earth, a symbol. He bowed to Rin and Iran both. "I vote," he said, his voice clear, "to undo what was done, to offer mercy, to give sanctuary." A sharp intake of breath echoed across the chamber. "Unorthodox," muttered the Velian jurist. "You are not of age." "Earth has no age," the boy said. "We've only choices. We made the right one. Once, we will again, one by one." The votes began. Each counselor stood, spoke, sat. Velia declines. Sirith abstains. Arkandos declines. And so it continued. Our Ian held her breath. Until Shanaea approves. Irin blinked. Rin nearly collapsed. The Shanaean elders guard from generations of civil purge rose and offered a single, slow nod. Then another voice followed. Lunara approves. 2. Then 4. Then 5. 12 total. Then silence. The vote was split. All turned to Earth's representative. To the child. To those who lost their worlds, he said. We offer one. He tapped a single button. The golden sigil of approval glowed. Rin didn't weep in the chamber, but hours later on the skybridge that arched over the sleeping city, she let the tears fall. It had taken everything, every rejection, every wound. But now the broken had a home again, and she had him. Irin stood beside her. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. His hand found hers, not as rescuer to refugee, not as savior to saved, but as equals. As to survivors who had never stopped believing the world could be kind again. You think it'll last, she whispered. His fingers tightened. It has to, and perhaps it would. Not because the universe was merciful, but because someone had been, because someone answered. The 13th knocked. Because a human had a heart and chose not to shut the door.